Oh, hello, we are live. That's what Linda Brown just said. We are live. So, hello, people out there in YouTube world. I'm supposed to. So, where'd Wendy go? She said, remind everybody that there's a link in the e-blast from Friday that you can join us online. But you're all here, and the people online probably already got on, right? But hopefully it's the same meeting. So there are people watching. Oh, hello, 11 folks. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be together here today. So I just want to thank Oscar for that wonderful sermon today. Thank you. Thank you. I am just inspired every Sunday morning when I come here. So I won't talk about it because it'll make me cry, and then I can't explain myself. So I'm Judy Hart. I'm the current president of the Board of Trustees. I would like all the other Board of Trustees members to come up here, the staff to come up here, and the program council liaisons to come up here. So I just wanted to make sure that you recognize these people. Yeah. Yeah. So these are the people who can answer your questions, right? There's not one person who knows it all. It takes an astounding village to keep this faith community functioning. So if I can't answer a question, ask one of these people. We are imperfect, we are kind, and we are loving. So if you could keep that in mind when you ask your question, then maybe together we can figure out the answer. Okay? There is no Solomon here, it's just us. So can you give them all a round of applause, please? Thank you. You're going to see most of them again up here at the microphone before the end of our meeting. Most of the, I would say every one of the Board of, oh, I almost poked you, Peg. Sorry. All of those members of the Board of Trustees and the Program Council leadership all were called at some time by the Nominations Committee. Right? And all those people said yes sometime. Didn't they, Carol? Yeah. So Carol's going to tell you about the nominations committee at the end of this meeting, more towards the end, so that you understand deeper and better what that's about. So, all right. We're going to start the meeting with our opening words, and Peg Pelter's going to read them for us.
Here we are in our circle again, a circle of vision and reflection, a forum for deciding and empowering. Here we are at the base of another bridge in another space spanning the shores of today and tomorrow, beckoning us to cross the chasm one day at a time. Here we are again, gathered at the cusp of the future, at the boundary that holds the community together. We are here in this circle of love and trust, brought to this moment by a series of choices and promises, by hope and gratitude, by our own shadows, faced and befriended. With a servant's heart, with a leader's listening, with a parent's love, truer than our own inner trembling. Let us model the health we seek for all and lean into community. Somewhere out there, all we dream is possible. Somewhere in here, we are sowing the seeds.
Those words were written by Sherry Woodbury, who's the settled minister at First Unitarian in Omaha. And some of us were lucky enough to go up and see her, is it called the installation? Yeah. That was remarkable to be up there for that celebration. So we're going to begin our meeting with safety first. So I'm going to call Kim Zeman up to explain to you what we've been working on.
So hello, I'm Kim Zeman, Vice President of the Board of Trustees, and I wanted to share one of the major initiatives we've been working on this fall as a board. In August, we organized a task force to revise our safety policy. It was last updated in 2019. The task force members included myself, our Minister Oscar Sinclair, Chelsea Krafka, Liz Bonnie Heerman, Peg Pelter, Linda Brown, Melody Vaccaro, and Trey Coley-Lusk. And the revisions we've made are a proposal right now until they're adopted at our December Board of Trustees meeting, but we thought you might be interested in hearing about a couple of areas we've changed or updated. So from the beginning of September until the end of October, we met every other week and had many in-depth discussions about safety at our church. We agreed that the 2019 safety policy was a solid document, yet there were areas that we needed to update and wording that we needed to change. In our discussions, we recognized that we could not foresee every safety issue. So we added the following sentence to the section about our safety philosophy. If any exception is requested to this policy, a written request should be made to the minister and the president of the Board of Trustees. So this allows our policy to be a flexible living document and less absolutist. Another major revision was adding a section on a threat response plan. I would really love to live in a world where we didn't have to worry about active shooters in our churches, but that is not our reality. So Section 5 in the revised safety policy outlines a planned response to threats both outside and inside our building. There are a few other revisions that we have made to this document, and the adopted policy will be available on the church's website after our December 7th meeting. We also have a few printed copies of it available if you'd like one after this meeting. Are there any questions about our safety policy revisions? Yes.
About whether or not we can carry here.
Andy circled the question. Yeah, you can repeat it.
Can you repeat that question again? I need asking whether we can carry. No, we are a weapons-free building. So
And if there were to be a speaker who wanted to have a gunned officer with her or him, how will the safety policy apply?
So our safety policy states that we do not allow weapons in our building and that armed security will not carry weapons. However, we've had some requests from people who have used our building to have security carry weapons as security for their event. And that is one of the reasons we decided to add this sentence that if an exception is requested, an exception to our policy on weapons or exception to other issues in our safety policy, a written request should be made to the minister, to the president of the Board of Trustees, and that would go to the board to decide.
Kim, if you'll just explain to people exactly how to find that though on the website, where you would go, and because it isn't like just boom.
Right, right. And this current version is not on the website yet because it needs to go through the adoption by the Board of Trustees, but it's within the governance documents. If you just put it in the search bar. Okay. So you can also search for safety policy in the search bar.
So are you saying we can read it before the congregational meeting?
We do have copies available now. This will not be voted on our congregational meeting because it is a board policy. It is something we wanted the congregation to be aware of because the safety of our church members is the responsibility of all of
Got
us.
it. Thank you.
I don't know if I've seen. I want to make sure you all use the mic or else the people on the live stream cannot hear.
Okay.
And if that happens, Kim, you need to repeat the
Okay.
information. there. Go ahead.
Thank you. I usually am just rushing into the church, and so I have not noticed whether there's anything posted about, there's a post, oh, thank you.
Yes, we do have a sign at the front about not carrying weapons in our building.
Thanks, Kim. How many times did you meet since September? But a lot, right. Make sure you thank those people on that team. That's hard work. It's really hard and emotional work. So thank you for gathering all the stakeholders that really had a voice in this work. So yeah, please, thank you. I'm not sure that we say thank you enough, you know. Okay, so everybody's wondering about the budget. So we're going to bring Jason and Mandy up to our treasurer and our vice treasurer to let you know where we are as of today.
Hello, I am Mandy Bonnie Herman. I'm interim treasurer, so I have not been doing this for very long. This has been a very huge learning experience for me, because I've been coming to the church for years, but you never think about all of the things that go behind the scenes to make the magic happen of church. And so as I've been looking at budget numbers, as I've been listening to the board haggle over what we can keep and what we might not be able to keep if we don't get the numbers, it has been extremely interesting to see all of the things that make this work and make us grow and make us happen. So with that in mind, the pledge team got together. They did a really awesome job at the pledge drive. That was a huge undertaking. But at the beginning of when I started plugging in numbers, it was looking like we were going to be falling short. We were going to be losing staff. I think everybody got the letter that things were going to be looking pretty scary. But we are UCL, so we show up. We had a ton of people that were able to pledge, more, that were able to put in one-time pledges. And so we were able to now put together, we're going to be presenting a balanced budget to be voted on at the next meeting. So that has been awesome. I mean, the board made phone calls, letters went out. I mean, it's been a lot of work, everybody working together to keep this place functioning and keeping it happening. So just a few pointers. I do have copies of the budget. If anybody wants to go line by line, I do have copies of it available for after if you want to. Like Judy said, we do have people here who are able to answer questions if you do want to go line by line. I'm going to do a brief overview of what is changing, what's happening, what we're going to be presenting. So we won't be staying too much in the weeds. I'll let Jason handle that.
That's what a vice treasurer does. He holds things.
By the way, so he's awesome. He's got a whole, he's awesome. Okay, we got a couple that want them now, if you wanna.
Okay.
Okay, well, so he'll hand them out while I'll go over the quick overview of what's going on. We are presenting a balanced budget with a total of $506,000, expenses coming in and expenses going out. In that budget, we are moving lay staff to UUA midpoint. We have been able to do that. So that is excellent news. This follows personnel policies. It's very significant. This budget does have some assumptions in it. We are assuming that we're going to have a renter in the fall. We're going to have 2 fundraising events, one in the spring, one in the fall. So keep that in mind. Keep your calendars open because we are going to have those available. We did get $60,000 in one-time donations this year. So that's something that we are going to have to discuss as a church as we are moving forward, and how we function, how we keep going, ways that we can keep ourselves whole as we're moving forward. And we did do, this budget does include a $15,000 draw from general reserves. So, we are going to be, we've got the budget handing out now for people who want to look at it. If you have any questions to the finance team that you want to field our way, let us know. We wanted to give everybody a chance to look at the budget before, it's just like, okay, here's 2 seconds to look at it. So if you have time, if you want to give Jason, me, anybody on the finance team, if you want to field any questions our way, if I don't know the answer, again, I'm interim, I'm still new, I'm still learning. But if you have any questions you want to field, send our way, let us know so that we can talk about it, make sure that everything's good to go when we vote on it this winter. So, anybody? Question in the back, yes. I think that's very important stuff that you know. And it's a very good question. Okay, anybody else? Okay. I think,
Yeah, thank you so much for,
Yes.
having faith in us and the board. And, we just crossed our 150th year. So essentially, this has happened many years over and over again. So we look at the past so we can look towards the future. And so I appreciate everyone being so open to what we're looking to do for the many years to come. So this is just an evolution of our church. Even though you all helped out pledging money, we also want you to think about pledging your time. This church is growing. And so for this to grow, look at how you want to serve, how you can spend time at the church to so many programs we offer. RGL, choir, services, the LGBTQ community, coffee, greeters. Take a look at your time as well, because for us to continue growing, we're going to need everyone to chip some of their time into this place as well. So please take a look at your time as well. Money's great, time is great too. So thank you so much.
If when you get home and you have a little time to look at the budget and you have a question, anybody that was up here in the front of the room at the beginning of this meeting, you can call on the phone or reach out via email, and they will help you understand that line item. And if they can't, they'll help you find somebody who understands. Again, it's a village that makes this happen. So thank you, Mandy and Jason. That was wonderful. Especially being so new. I think that's something that I think we have to continue to talk about is how do we raise up leadership in this church? It starts with an ask, and that's how all those one-time donations came in, was the ask or the information about this is where we are. It might not be where you hope we are, but once we say it out loud, that's when we have to come together strongly as a community. So, all right. Oscar, you're up next to talk about your sabbatical. Or would you rather the nominations committee goes first? Let's do nominations. All right. Carol, oh, yeah, Jean. Oh, here. Thank you for saying that, people online. So, yeah. And I am in the short version as Carol is. So if you're taller, just, magic. So help us out. All right, Carol. Carol's here to tell us about the nominations committee, what it is, what it does. That's it, right?
That's it.
Okay.
Well, I've been a member of the nominations committee for the past 3 years, along with Mary Kay Stillwell, and she and I will be going off the committee this year. And so we're presenting 2 new people to be members of the nominating committee. The remaining 3 members are Christy Wamstadt, Arden Hill, and Molly Pazant. Yes, pardon me. I forget names. The nominating committee's main job is presenting people for the Board of Trustees. That's very important. But to do that, we have to have a nominating committee. So this year, we're presenting 2 new people for a 3-year term. The first is Emily Cameron Chattel. If you'll stand up, Emily. And she's been a church member since 1969. And she's been very active in the church. And just a few years ago was president of the board and has passed off the board. So she'll be knowing a lot of people and a lot of things that are going on. This information will be in the new beacon that you'll receive after the 1st of December. And so you can read the entire synopsis there. Her goals for the future of the church is to help to ensure the survival of Unitarian Universalism in Lincoln. And that encompasses everything we do in our church, I think. So the second candidate is Lori Stratman. And see, there's Lori, if you'll stand up. She's been a church member since 2013, but I think she's been pretty active in that time since then. And she also was past president of the board just recently. So there again, she'll be acquainted with everything that goes on in the church. Her goal is to invite members of UCL to run for the board who desire to represent the will of the congregation rather than what their personal agenda might be, and to identify good listeners who are skilled at critical thinking. Thank you, Lori.
Wow, I had just settled in, Carol. I thought you were going to do some more. But isn't that amazing that we had the forethought, that the people before us had the forethought to create a nominations committee? So, one of the board priorities this year is to get more people involved in everything in the church. And it's so interesting when you put that as a goal, it's amazing how that happens in a way you didn't necessarily think it would. So nominations committee, all of the donors who did one-time donations or raised their pledges, those are all the people that are getting involved in a different way. I was going to tell a story about the monkey's paw, but I'm thinking I'm not going to. So some of you know that story, right? You got to be careful what you ask for sometimes. But Oscar, I think that's it for the business right now, other than, will you tell us about your sabbatical and what we'll be doing while you're gone?
So the bylaws say that at the winter congregational meeting, the minister gives an update on major initiatives in the church. And so that's what I'll do at the winter meeting. I did want to set aside a little bit of time at these town halls to talk about the sabbatical that's coming up. But actually before that, I want to back up and talk about a thing in the budget for just a minute. It went by really fast, but one of the things that Mandy said in describing the budget is that we got our lay staff to the UUA midpoint salary levels. So that's a big mouthful, but what that means is the UUA puts out recommended salary ranges every year. And in our personnel policies, it says that we will pay our staff at midpoint. And in 2019, in November of 2019, they raised those recommendations quite a bit because the cost of living in Lincoln has gone up over the last 10 years. And so for 3 years, we've been out of compliance with our personnel policies. And as the person that supervises the staff team, that is an uncomfortable place to be. So thank you for helping us do that. It means a lot. It gets us into compliance with our policies, but it also helps keep our staff appropriately compensated because there are a lot of things you can do other than working at a church. happy to answer any more questions about that, but I do want to just highlight that because that was a big push this year to make that happen, and I'm truly grateful to the board and the congregation for helping do it. Okay, sabbatical. So, one of the really joyful parts of my job is that every 7 years or so, every 4 to 7 years, ministers at Unitarian Universalist churches take sabbaticals. This is, if you can believe it, my 6th year here in Lincoln, which means that I am taking a sabbatical this spring. So I will be on sabbatical from January 15th through June 15th. So it's 5 months. 1 month for each year served is how it works. I will be in England. We're going to be hosted, Stacy and Ailish and I will be hosted by the Seven Oaks Unitarian Church in the village of Bessels Green, which is about 20 kilometers southeast of London. I'll be preaching there every once in a while, traveling around England, preaching at different Unitarian churches there. And the big one for me is that I will be finishing my doctoral thesis and presenting it, both at the English Unitarian gathering, at their seminary, and then hopefully presenting it at General Assembly here in the States as well. That's what I'll be doing. What we'll be doing here is there's a list of guest preachers. So it'll be a combination of guests from outside the congregation, folks from inside the congregation preaching, and then some folks that you probably know reasonably well because they preach here pretty often. That list is well set, which is a good thing. So for each Sunday, there is both a guest preacher and a worship associate who's taking the lead on interfacing with that person. I'll say one of the big thing that we lined up was Kiana Dene Perkins, who preached here remotely in June, will be preaching here once a month. Also remotely, because she currently works for the UU Church in Ann Arbor, she interns for a UU Church in Oregon, and she'll be doing some sabbatical coverage preaching here. So her life is an interesting one. But I'm really, really excited because she is a voice that is going to be heard in Unitarian Universalism for a long time. And so this also gives us a chance to have some continuity here because it'll be a single sermon series once a month over the 5 months. Other than that, there's a lot of little pieces. Judy Hart's going to be supervising the staff team while I'm out. There'll be a list of clergy in town here who are available for things like member memorial services or emergency pastoral care. One of the things that I was hoping to have by this meeting was a one-page sheet of, if I have a question about this while Oscar's on sabbatical, who do I call? I spent 4 days driving out of the last 7, so that sheet is not done yet, but it will be done by the next town hall. That's about it. So I am happy to chat more or answer any questions you have, either about the sabbatical or about anything else with the church. There's a question up here. We're going to wait for the microphones for the folks online. And I've got the live stream here too, so if you are on the live stream and have questions, just type them in and we'll get them answered.
So will we hear from you every now and then, like you did when you were walking in the snow through the woods, walking in the English Kew Gardens or something?
The short answer is no. Okay. The short answer is no, and the longer answer is you'll hear quite a bit from me after June 15th. The sabbatical is really a chance to step back from the day-to-day needs. So I will not be checking minister@unitarianlincoln.org. If there's an emergency, you can reach out to either Jean or Judy, and they will know how to get in contact with me. But I'll be stepped back a little bit. Because in part, the idea of the sabbatical is not just that it's sort of time away, but it's a chance to really refresh and get excited about ministry for the next 7 years. And so one of the ways you do that is you take that space so you really have time to do intentional spiritual practices, intentional thought, intentional writing about, what are the things that I'm called to right now. And that's harder if you also have responsibilities at your home congregation. There's another question back here, and then we'll come up here.
Oscar, when will your dissertation be available to read?
2 chapters are drafted now. If you'd like to read them, just ask. There's a bunch of copies in the office. The whole thing I am sending to the seminary to get approved in March. So it'll be done when I get back. That's the best way to answer that question. So I will come back. I'm graduating in May. I'll come back with that degree done and finished.
I just wanted to clarify that someone's checking the minister email alias, right? Like it's not you, but somebody will check it?
I don't believe so. There'll be an auto response saying, Reverend Sinclair is on sabbatical. If you have an emergency, here's who to reach out to.
Okay.
This is not a monitored email account until June 15th. So I'll tell all of you that I'm also not going to go back and read 5 months of emails in that account. So truly, if there's an emergency, reach out to somebody other than me. Other questions?
Online it says, do you want us to not reach out?
Online it says, do you want us to not reach out? No, I mean, just recognize that I'm going to be on sabbatical, which means I'm going to be stepped back from my service in this congregation for 5 months. That means that I will be back here on June 15th. Well, June 16th, because it takes a little while to fly. But if you reach out, I probably won't answer. That's the God's honest truth here. And we have practice in this, right? So this is the same thing that we did when Jean was on sabbatical a year ago, and the same thing that we did when Chelsea was on sabbatical 2 years ago. That distance is important so that the person on sabbatical can do their work, and so that the congregation can do their work, right? Because part of the idea here too is that it is a good thing for the congregation to recognize its identity outside of this relationship, right? Outside of the relationship between the minister and the congregation. That's a really valuable thing to do. If a leader in a system is doing their job well, you should be able to pluck them out of the system and have the system run pretty well without them in it. A sabbatical is an opportunity to see where you're doing pretty well in that and where you need to work on it, right? Because probably some things are going to be a little rocky. But that's really good for the congregation to know. That's really good for the minister to know. And that's what we'll be working on in July. I think there's a question back here.
Are these ministerial getaways, get away from us, typical of most of the religions that are practiced, let's say, in Lincoln or other similar congregations?
That's an interesting question. So I don't know how different denominations handle it. They all handle it a little bit differently. I know the Presbyterians, for instance, take sabbaticals, but they tend to take shorter sabbaticals that are a little bit more frequent. So if you think about the purpose of it, this idea of renewal as sort of the core function of a sabbatical, I know the Methodist system pretty well, so I'm going to talk about that. How the Methodists organize their ministry is that a bishop assigns you to a different place, and often does not assign you to a place longer than 6 or 7 years, right? It's assumed that after 6 or 7 years, you need to reinvigorate yourself and be doing something a little bit different and rethink sort of what your ministry is. We don't do that in Unitarian Universalism. We recognize that same thing, that after 6 or 7 years, the questions that animate your ministry at the beginning of that 7-year period are not the questions that are going to animate your ministry in the following season. So rather than a bishop saying, well, Oscar, you've been in Lincoln for 7 years, we're afraid you're getting a little stale, so we're going to send you to Wichita. We instead build in this assumption that, okay, Oscar, after 7 years, you're going to take some time, you're going to step away from the congregation, you're going to preach from a bunch of different pulpits that you don't know well, and you're going to figure out what those animating questions are going to be. So that's the purpose behind it. It's not every denomination does it the same way, but they all have some answer to that question of how do you keep a long ministry vibrant? Because this is now officially a long ministry. If I go on sabbatical and come back, I am a long tenured minister. Which I know in Lincoln with the history of Fritz and Charles is like saying, I've been the shortstop for the Orioles for 3 years, I'm long tenured. And then you have Cal Ripken like looming behind you. I feel a bit like that with Charles, but the average length of ministry in Unitarian Universalist churches is 6 years. This is my 6th year here. So for me, the question is, I'm not going to be a new Unitarian Universalist minister. So what is the role going forward as one of the longer tenured UU ministers in the area and one of the longer tenured clergy in Lincoln? I don't know the answer to that yet, but I know that that's one of the questions that I'll be thinking about.
I don't have a question. I have a comment for this beloved congregation. It makes me, I cannot even describe, terribly sad to know he's not going to be here for months on end. And it's scary because it feels like we just called him like 2 years ago, but I didn't realize you'd been here for 6 years. But this church has survived some very rocky times before he came, and we got stronger, and he has helped us get even stronger, and I have absolute faith that this church will not fall apart if the captain is sleeping in his bunk and other people are running the ship. Okay? He won't be sleeping, I know. But
a little bit. I think there's a...
So my question here for you, Oscar, is after your sabbatical, is purpose of the sabbatical is to plan your next 6 years? Mm-hmm. Is that essentially one of the things you're looking to accomplish?
Yeah. Yes, if you kind of zoom out to 30,000 feet, that's the goal. I'm not going to come back with a Gantt chart of 6 years of ministry in Lincoln. What I will probably come back to thinking about, having thought about, is when the congregation called me in 2017, we were really rapidly trying to grow, right? That was the mandate the search committee handed me. Was we want to grow, we want to add a second service, we want to build a new sanctuary out there, organize your ministry around that. And I did for 3 years. We did that, and then for 3 years we did pandemic ministry. And so for me, it will be less what's the steps that we're going to do each year, and more, well, what do we want to do at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln? Do we want to do that sort of rapid growth model again? Is that a realistic thing to do in the aftermath of COVID? Or do we want to define this ministry in partnership with others through this community organizing effort that we just started? Or is there some new idea that we haven't thought of before? That's the kind of thing that I'll be thinking about. I'm hoping that that's also some of the conversation that happens here at the church. Because again, also a chance for the congregation as a system to say, who do we want to be? What are the questions that animate us? What are we going to tell Oscar when he comes back to say, this is where we want to go together? So that's how I think about it.
On a more mundane level, what is the subject of your dissertation and who will evaluate it?
The subject of my the subject of my project is developing an oral history of the pandemic at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, using the model of responding to collective trauma as sort of the theoretical framework for that. If you're interested in knowing more about what that looks like, we did a service on November 13th that really drew out that and drew on the oral histories. There's also, if you go out to the gallery, on the old pulpit, there's a copy of all the oral histories that we've been gathering over the fall. So that's what the project is. I am submitting it to Wesley Theological Seminary in March. It'll be evaluated by the Doctor of Ministry Committee at Wesley. Assuming that they give the thumbs up, I'll graduate in May. Another piece of it that is somewhat in addition to the requirements of the degree is that one of the things that I'll be doing while I'm on sabbatical is presenting the research in an academic setting at Harris Manchester College, which is the Unitarian Seminary at Oxford. And then presenting it at the English version of General Assembly, and then hopefully the American version of General Assembly. So I assume those aren't evaluative presentations, but they are presentations with some tough questioners in the room. I think we have probably time for one more question, if there is one.
Will Teddy go with you to England?
Teddy will not come with us to England. No. Teddy will stay with a good friend here in town because she would have to be in quarantine for 6 weeks to 2 months each way, and just doesn't work. Sorry, Teddy is our dog. That's probably... Ailish is coming. Yes, we are not leaving her, we are not leaving our daughter with friends.
I just need to piggyback on what Oscar was saying about it gives us as a congregation a chance to look at ourselves, because we worked really hard to get away from being a minister-centered congregation to be a programmatic one. And so it's up to us to really focus anytime to read that beacon, stay alert, be aware of what's going on, talk to the board members. They have a board meeting every month. They have a place on the board meeting agenda where you can bring your comments or your questions. The program council meets every month, so every committee gets a voice. So there's so many places that you can make yourself known, and a place where we can grow as a group. So please be a person that's aware and stay informed.
All right. I'll hand this back to Judy.
All right, there we go. There's a lot of initiatives that are happening at the board level right now that you'll hear more about at the congregational meeting. But we have an evaluation going on right now of the Board of Trustees. We've already evaluated the program council, and I think, Karen, did you write about that in one of the Beacon articles over the last couple of months? We have joined Justice in Action, which is the Interfaith Justice Council here in Lincoln, comprised of 22 churches. We begin our research part of the annual process on December 3rd, which is next Saturday. If anybody's interested in that, you'll probably get if you signed up at the initial meetings to do the research part, you'll be getting a phone call this week to talk more about that. But if you don't know what I'm talking about and you really want to know, find me afterwards, please, or email me. What else is going on? We're reviewing the bylaws. There's a task force in place right now to review the bylaws. That happens every 5 years. I'll tell you that review is going to be done with a lens of anti-racism, because everything we have learned through our Summer Indigenous programming, through our Beloved Conversations work, 50 people in this congregation were trained in the Beloved Conversations anti-racism work. So we're using everything we've learned over these last 3 years to take a look at our bylaws, which, those are the rules that we try to live by. We have to live by. So, there's so much else going on, but that's plenty for right now. There'll be a written report at the congregational meeting from the Luff Committee, from the minister, from the Board of Trustees, the finance team. So all those things will be written down and available for you before the congregational meeting, which is on December 11th at 11:30. Am I correct? Anything? All right. Is there anything that you're wondering about that we haven't addressed that you would like us to keep in mind before the next town hall meeting, or to get back to you on? Anything? Scanning. Yeah. BJ, hold on. The microphone's coming.
I'm just curious about I know there were lots of things that went on during the pandemic and in the church, and a lot of them I don't know about. I'm only discovering some things on the internet now, but I'd like to know, was it more expensive or less expensive to do certain things? How did we...
We'll have a conversation. Let's have coffee or tea.
Okay.
Your choice. All right? I'll come to you.
Great.
Okay?
Wonderful.
All right. You heard it. I'll let you know when the date is. Anything else? There's another question over there.
Well, I'm just a little concerned because I've heard there's been so many murders in Oxford, in England. Fictional. All right. Thank you all. Are there any other messages online, Jean? Oh, you're very welcome. You know what? It's a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to have this opportunity at this moment, which is really which is a time of change. So I think these next 5 months are going to be really good for us to figure out who we want to be going into the future. There are so many questions about our stewardship campaigns, how we're going to do that. We're going to start talking now. I mean, we're talking now, but every board meeting is going to be dedicated to a more creative way of imagining. So, most board meetings, especially over these last couple of years, were about business. How do we survive the not being together every Sunday? How do we survive the unknown? And I think we have to embrace the unknown and say what we know this very moment is, and have some
has some backup plans for how we go about the future. We are going to have to be proactive, though, in our fundraising if to make this work as we start working on the 2024 budget. So, all right. Well, thank you all. Thank you to the folks online. And this is a joy to be together in this room. I can't say that enough. So, anybody who wants to come back to the town hall next week with more in-depth questions, you're really welcome to bring them, and we'll try to answer them so we're all on the same page. So thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you.